Live show.
If you want tickets to the live show on Sunday, November the 5th.
Sunday, November the 5th.
In the Thirsty Bear pub in Waterloo, central London.
Head over to Eventbrite where you can buy tickets. We start at 2 p.m. is when the first game is. We will be there earlier than that.
Live screen of Forest v Villa, Luton v Liverpool, and then this podcast, but the Game Week 11 review with Suj rather than you.
And it goes all the way through till sort of they kick us out.
When they kick us out.
Exactly that.
Tickets are £5. All money raised goes to the Game Week 39 charity fundraiser. The live show is brought to you in partnership with our friends at FPL Meets.
Help a brother out.
They organise a lot of awesome free meetups all around the world. And so, yeah, please do come and show support and come and say hi at the live show on the 5th of November as well.
Sunday, November the 5th.
It'll be a really, really good day out. Guarantee that.
Any fireworks that day, James?
I mean, it might be for Watkins and Salah owners as Villa go to Forest and Liverpool go to Luton. So it'll be very interesting games from a fantasy perspective as well, whatever format you play.
Nice one. Listeners, remember the 5th of November. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Live show.
That's coming. After 2 hours of setting the mics up, cables, cameras, I have to sit like a fucking hunchback. So, listen, thanks everybody for turning up to our first ever Planet FPL Live.
You're going to do that for an hour.
Could be a STD.
What the fuck? STDs.
You want an intro?
Do STDs make you miss football?
I don't know, some could. What you been doing, Lara Foster? Hello everybody, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
It's People's Poll on a Friday, James.
Yes.
And you put a bunch of topics out, which were?
FPL related was part of the reason for doing it Friday. What do you mean football?
Football, FPL, football.
No one's ever said that ever
in
the history of ever. And I think it was a surprise winner, but a fairly unanimous winner. Actually.
Okay.
There were 3 options put forward. The one that I thought was probably going to piss the vote ended up bottom, which was Haaland v Salah. Such as the desperation to get the right one, but no, only 19% of the vote. 29% of the vote went to FPL enablers, so potential look across the positions of best options. The winner was a look at Game Week 18 and how to prepare for the awkward looking blank. This is not something that we're unfamiliar with. We're kind of used to this build up to the FA Cup quarterfinals, and we know that the blanks come in, and I think we will kind of, unless we're free hitting in that week, we get sucked into buying players that we know we're going to play. And what's interesting about Game Week 18 is there's only one blank. There's only 2 teams not playing, and that's Manchester City and Brentford. And yet I can see it already having a psychological impact on me personally, which is why I wanted to talk about it. On the subject of City Brentford, it's obviously postponed because of City's involvement in the Club World Cup. We still think it will go into Game Week 20, which would give City a double game week of Sheffield United at home and Brentford at home. And for Brentford, it would be Crystal Palace away and Manchester City away. And interestingly, Brentford have fixtures against Wolves at home the week before and Nottingham Forest at home the week afterwards. So I think you could just look at Manchester City as a bonus game in a really good 3 game week spell. I think one of the things people want to know to clarify first is, when should we start thinking that it's not going to be Game Week 20?
Oh, that's a you or Ben Crellin or any of the crew that like to fixture plan, James. Question.
Well, look, Premier League's commitment was 6 weeks. I think the game will most likely be played on Wednesday, January the 3rd. So I think if we get towards the beginning of Game Week 13 and there hasn't been an announcement, we should start asking questions. But until that point, I would still work on the basis, and remember there's an international break between 12 and 13, I would still think it's highly likely to be in Game Week 20. I can't really think of why, with both teams out the Carabao Cup, I can't really think why it won't go in there. And it can also go the following midweek when the Carabao Cup semi-final first legs are, and that would still be Game Week 20. Correct, because there's a big gap because the FA Cup third round between Game Week 20 and Game Week 21. So there's 2 possible midweeks it could land in. I think all of us are still pretty confident that it will happen. Again, if we haven't got anything by Game Week 13, I'd begin to ask questions of why that is, and then there has to be a conversation to have. And that's obviously particularly important because a number of people are thinking of obviously wildcarding in game week 19 and steam into those teams. And I think you still would. Like with the Brentford fixtures before and afterwards, you'd still probably get at least sort of Mbumo and Flecken or something and Free City as probably a minimum. So the reason there's a consciousness, I think there's two ways of looking at this. One is a lot of people have already wildcarded. The majority of people over this period are not going to. The majority of engaged managers now are going to wait. You could, of course, wildcard in game week 18, but then you're not going to get your maximum of City Brentford.
Correct.
You could wildcard then and bench treble City and Flecken and then maybe plan to buy Mbumo in 19. You could do it that way. From a value perspective, that's probably not going to make sense. You're probably better off doing it in game week 19. You haven't wildcarded.
I have wildcarded.
You have wildcarded.
We record a podcast each and every week about Fantasy Premier League, mate.
What? When did you wildcard?
About 3 weeks ago.
Was it good?
I haven't wildcarded.
You haven't wildcarded?
I have.
You haven't
3 weeks,
really?
I'm saying 3 weeks ago, I wildcarded. We
When?
record a podcast each and every week here, James.
This is where you know I talk too much and don't listen enough, basically. Okay, so we're on different paths. You've wildcarded. Yes. I haven't.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, having already done it, what's your consciousness at the moment about game week 18? Is it part of your thought process at the moment or not?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Well, there's two ways. There's what I would say in terms of decision making about what I want to do with game week 18. There's kind of like a hierarchy of, okay, this to think about. Firstly, I would say there's so many occasions when we get to, usually around like game week 30, 31, something like that, where there's a blank game week. And we're quite often happy to go into that blank game week, depending on what the fixtures are, with like 10 or 9 or 8. And you're kind of like, you know what, it's not as big a deal to go into any given game week with 8 or 9 players. So I'm not scared of going into that with...
But this is one blank rather than
I
10 teams.
I'm not going to... I would not end up with less than 11 players. But, so firstly, it's a case of... I'm not scared about... I'll probably only have 2 City at that time. And as it stands, I've got 0 Brentford. So right now, I've got 2 City, 0 Brentford. Not a problem, although when you start looking at the likes of Lamptey and stuff on the bench, yes, maybe a problem. Then the second thing is, all right, well, what are the fixtures that players that I do have, and what are the problems that potentially arise? And there's a number of decent fixtures that week. There's one standout pain in the arse fixture, which is Liverpool-Arsenal. But right now, as it stands, I've got, with that fixture specifically, I'd only be concerned if I was heavily exposed defensively as opposed to from an attacking point of view, because that will either be 3-2, 2-2, something like that.
Yep.
I've got one each from the defenders, Gabriel and Shimikas, and the likelihood is Shimikas might not be there if Robertson gets anywhere near close to fitness by then anyway.
So who's your 5 defenders at the moment?
Cash, Shimikas, Trippier, Lamptey, and someone else.
So as it would stand now, if we were approaching that week right now,
Gabriel.
will you play him over Shimikas?
No. Sorry, that's my 5 that I've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'd have to play one, wouldn't you? And look, it's 1 week.
And I'll just play it.
It's not a disaster.
If I look at alternatives, like who else do I have? All right, Aston Villa at home to Sheffield United. I'm on triple Aston Villa at the moment, so I'm quite happy with that as a potential fixture.
So
West Ham have got Man United at home. I've got Bowen. I'm happy with that as a fixture, particularly if he puts Lindelof back and left back. Come on, Eric Ten Hag.
But what you got to factor in for you that's already wildcarded, I get what you're saying. 18's not a huge problem. It's not, right? I mean, a lot of teams at the moment might be sitting there with just say Haaland and Mbumo and going, well, I'll sell them. It's fine. I get that. Great. But 2 weeks later, you want these players.
Well, I'll have triple City because I'll have transfers to burn either side.
And there's that. So before Manchester City's blank in game week 18, they have Luton away and Crystal Palace at home. And it's even if it's not a double, it's still Everton away and Sheffield United at home afterwards for Manchester City. This is where it begins to get complicated because 18 in itself is not a major drama, I think. It's the before and the after. And the same applies to Brentford. I've spoken about their fixtures either side as well, where there's every chance you're going to want a piece of that. I still think, look, if you've got like a penalty taker and a talisman like Mbumo who's got a double, and he's got good fixtures before and afterwards in Wolves at home and Nottingham Forest at home, you're still going to want a piece of that. And also, if you look a little bit earlier with Brentford's, which I think is a bit different to Manchester City's, because City obviously 12 to 15 is well documented. It's a difficult run. I don't think anyone's going to be exposed if they don't have free Manchester City over that period. There's plenty of FPL managers at the moment going to go with none, particularly those who are obviously on the Mo Salah and no Haaland path. But despite 18 playing a consciousness in my mind, I'm earmarking buying Brian and Bumo in game week 14. They play Luton at home, Brighton away, Sheffield United away, and Villa at home before that run when, say, Tottenham have got a difficult period. They come into Manchester City away. And it might be that I flip, say, a Maddison to Mbumo and then flip it back even for 18 itself, or maybe in 17 when Brentford play Villa. So for me, who hasn't wildcarded yet and intending to wildcard afterwards, I'm obviously looking towards dead ending into that week. And yet I'm still thinking of adding Mbumo, and I'm sitting there with Haaland and Alvarez, and one of my plans potentially has buying John Stones at one stage as well. So I might be landing in a position where I do end up at that week landing there with Stones, Alvarez, Haaland and Mbumo. Now from that perspective, at that point I could just go Haaland to Wilson or whatever, and take Mbumo to Salah near enough and do a -4. I could do that sort of thing, for example. But what that means is I have to have a real consciousness about the rest of my team sitting there at the moment with the likes of Malo Gusto, for example. So I think it's important in the first instance to identify what's good in game week 18, because you might need some of your crap in that week, right? I think if you were free hitting, the three outstanding teams for game week 18 are Villa, Tottenham and Newcastle.
West Ham at home to Man United. Come on, son. Okay.
I'll come on to a free hit draft in a second. So I think Villa have got Sheffield United at home. Yeah, if you're free hitting, it's free.
Spurs, Everton
Tottenham at home to Everton.
3 of them.
I think so. And Newcastle away to Luton. One caveat on Newcastle and why it might be better to wait last for them is they obviously have the Carabao Cup quarter-final against Chelsea the midweek before. I think it will be a Tuesday night, which will be helpful, which would then give a 4-day gap till the Luton game. But I think there aren't many great forwards, I would say, in game week 18. We look at the fixtures. Like I looked at a free hit team, and I think I'm looking at like Watkins plus a Newcastle player. You could make a case for like an Awoniyi at home to Bournemouth, but it's not like outstanding, I don't think. So the actual forward options are in 18, I don't think are unbelievable. You're looking at like, Nketiah or Jesus away to Liverpool, Darwin Núñez at home to Arsenal. These players can return, obviously, but the forward options aren't outstanding. When you think of targeting, say, Burnley, they go to Fulham. What am I doing? Free hitting in like Raul Jimenez, who hasn't scored since the last decade or something. That's not of huge interest. So I'd have a consciousness about the forwards in that week. But as I said, I think it really comes around to thinking about enablers. And I see lots of people want to make defensive moves at the moment. And I think for me, it's all got a consciousness about 18. So sitting there at the moment with Udogie, who we know is 50-50 for Monday, I'm still looking at him and thinking, you could be extremely useful for me for this period. And I'm obviously probably in an unusual situation where, bar Gusto, I'm giving myself selection headache problems every week. But now I'm almost heading even more that way, I think. So I think to myself, well, I could buy Lascelles right now, and that's really good in the short term. But if Sven Botman is back for game week 18, and he's useless to you. He's useless to me.
Yeah.
And therefore, if I'm carrying in City and Brentford players, then that's a problem I don't need right now.
Sure.
That makes sense.
100%.
So I have a consciousness about where I'm going. A different example would be Matty Cash, right? It's well documented that Villa have a really, really good run of fixtures. We know that. But by the time you land to game week 13, between 13 and 17, I've actually got Villa bottom of my fixture ticker. Bottom, as in worst. Tottenham away, Bournemouth away, City at home, Arsenal at home, Brentford away. Like
Two home fixtures there, though.
Yeah, I get that. And Bournemouth away and Brentford away don't particularly scare you. But how often am I actually going to be comfortable playing Matty Cash in those games? Do I want to play him in all 5 of those games? Yet, I want him in game week 18, and there wouldn't be a doubt about that at the moment. So I'm almost looking at a situation where I want to put myself in a position where I'm going to bench him. Similarly, a lot of this might carry through a Gabriel or a Saliba. They've got great run of fixtures, Arsenal. But beforehand, 16 to 18 is Villa away, Brighton at home, Liverpool away. Now, for the defensive assets, I'd say that's 3 really rough fixtures, almost as bad as it could get. So do I want to be coming off an Arsenal player around about 16? And am I better off, therefore, holding Matty Cash and just benching him in a number of weeks? So I think it really needs a consciousness of future planning. There's also Chelsea's fixture swing, which is coming up. They go to Wolves in game week 18, which I think's quite an interesting one. And they come into a really good run from game week 16. 16 to 20, they're brilliant. Everton away, Sheffield United at home, Wolves away, Palace at home, Luton away. So I wonder if when we get there, talking about that swing of Arsenal's and Chelsea's, if moves like Saliba to, dare I say it, Reece James in game week 16 might be the sort of move that's popular. I'm looking at probably getting in Robert Sanchez, because that's when my kind of Johnston-Turner rotation looks really, really bad around about that period. So how much are you thinking about this in terms of more your enabling transfers?
I'm not.
You're just not a problem for you at all?
No, I think I'm happy to just take hits when we get closer and figure it out from there. The only thing I'm thinking about is, like, I don't like having enablers and fringe players that are not going to play. So Tariq Lamptey is a problem for me, but I'll fix that as we get closer. I've got money in the bank, so I'm actually likely to, if Estupiñán was fit, for example, I don't want to replace Lamptey with him, and I can find the money to get up there. So yeah, overall, I think it's going to be more a case of just let me get 11 players on the pitch, as opposed to worrying about the blank specifically. I'll have 3 City in the lead up, and I'll have 3 City out the other end. And if that means taking one hit, say I roll into 18 with 2 free transfers, I use one of them to remove a City, I'll take a hit on the other side to get a City back in for those fixtures, because I'm not going without 3 either side. And Brentford, I know what you're saying about the fixtures there, but regardless, there's only a 1 or 2. I'd only ever want 1 or 2. And Bomo clearly, maybe a defensive, but I'm not going to be really sweating about not having a lot of Brentford assets for that. Even for the double, you won't see me wanting to steam into 6 Brentford and City for the double, should it happen.
I could see me...
I could have 5, but maybe 4 or 5.
No, I mean, I could see... I mean, the other thing to factor in with City, of course, over that period is it is the Christmas period off the back of the Club World Cup. Like...
rotation.
He's going to be there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas he's probably not with Brentford. But someone like a Matthias Jensen over that period, who you know just ticks over and has a little bit of consistency, and we never speak about him as an FPL asset, but actually performs absolutely reasonably well for his price. Stick him in on the wildcard in 19 and play him for 3 weeks, and then downgrade it. You could go with like Jensen and Mbumo, go quite strong, I think, on that wildcard in 19. This is what I'm thinking. And downgrade one down to 4.5-ish, and then get Mbumo back up to a higher, whether it's a Martinelli, Maddison, something like that, Bowen, whatever. That's the sort of thing I've got in my mind. And that decision obviously doesn't need to be made at this sort of stage. I think Flecken in goal would be perfectly reasonable.
Agree with that.
And I think he is, we've kind of joked about him a lot as well, but as a long-term pick, he would be fine. I would add a caution on Brentford that they have a run from game week 22 to game week 32, which is pretty ugly and long term. And so it might be that there's a consciousness of that. But I'd still want to attack the 3 fixtures, which is Wolves at home, Palace away, Forest at home, with the bonus Manchester City fixture. And City has said, I mean, just Everton away and then double 2 home games. They've got Burnley at home 2 after that. Then they go to Brentford themselves again, Everton at home, Chelsea at home, Bournemouth away. I mean, that's a you wouldn't wildcard in 19 and not go 3 City, would you?
No chance. No chance. I'm not wildcarding, and I'm not going without 3 City.
So it's interesting because me and Suj haven't spoken about this prior. I think it's interesting that you've wildcarded and it's not a consciousness on you, whereas I think for me, who's going to...
haven't, and it is.
Yeah, that's interesting,
Perhaps
isn't it?
you spend it's a consequence. You spend more time thinking about it.
Maybe it's just looking too far into the future.
For me, it is a little bit.
Is it?
But you're definitely wildcarding 19.
But I'm also talking about buying like Mbumo and Stones potentially over this period, which is going to make 18 more awkward.
Correct.
So I'm not touching these because that's going to give me part of the headache. I am looking at other weeks and going, right, attack Mbumo in 14.
With a view that you'll leave yourself. I can see you easily leaving yourself 2 free transfers rolling into 18.
That would be the ideal.
And take 1 hit. So 3 transfers fixes that problem and wildcard straight out. What I kind of would phrase the question a little bit differently, thinking about it. Say you can wildcard in 19 and work towards 18. I can't. So what is it that you can do that I can't? What is it that you can do that I'll find harder to do?
It's City and Brentford on either side.
Mm-hmm.
It's also fixtures.
I would say that's Brentford
others
on either side, because I think City 3 either side is not going to be difficult.
But if you look at, say, from game week 19 onwards in terms of teams that have got some good fixtures, so take Arsenal's 4 after going to Liverpool. So you're not going to want to go into 18 with like 3 Arsenal, right? Arsenal's 4 fixtures from 19: West Ham at home, Fulham away, Palace at home, Forest away. It's good. So you're not going to want to land in 18 with like 3 Arsenal, whereas I might hit into 19
with 3 Arsenal.
I'll
probably have 1 or 2. So I'm going to miss out on Arsenal. I think that's fair. What else do you think I could miss out on?
There's also, because of the
the
potential consciousness of taking City out, City and Brentford out and putting them back in, you might miss that Chelsea run as well.
Okay,
is another thing. Villa's fixtures are fine afterwards from 19. There's a couple of tricky ones.
If I end up with triple Villa in that 18, I hold them. Like it's not something that I need to move on and I'm going to get stuck with.
Yeah, I think as a group of fixtures, it's Manchester United away, Burnley at home, Everton away, Newcastle at home, Sheffield United away.
3 of the 5 are okay.
I mean, even still, United away, whatever, and Newcastle is still a home game at Villa Park. So you certainly wouldn't fret with
3
Watkins and stuff like that.
What about Spurs? Like off the back of 18, do you guys have a decent run afterwards?
Yeah, similar.
So if I've got triple Spurs in 18, if I've worked towards that, again, not such a big problem for me.
I think if you look, there's no point looking beyond game week 25 because game week 26 is the Carabao Cup final. But if you look at Tottenham's 7 afterwards, think of this particularly for the attacking players: Brighton away, Bournemouth at home, Manchester United away, Brentford at home, Everton away, Brighton at home, Wolves away. The game week 19 fixtures are repeated in game week 24.
Yep.
So as a 7 there, that's really good for Tottenham's offensive players.
Think about it this way: if you're steaming into Arsenal, City and Brentford as we come out the other side of 18, you're going to maybe sacrifice a bit of Spurs and a bit of Villa.
Not necessarily. The other thing to note is Heung-min Son might be at the Asia Cup, so it might be one just to go without. And obviously Mo's going to be at AFCON.
Okay.
So you have to think about that as well. You're not on Mo.
At the moment, no.
But those who are, and I'm sure those who are on Salah and not on Haaland would just literally flip that, I think. But it's still transfers that's going to cost you and missing potential other things like attacking into Chelsea or having the right free Villa or Brighton have a good run as well. And
then Mitoma won't be there. He'll be at the Asia Cup if Sonny's at the Asia Cup.
Yeah, but then that would make someone like a Simon Adingra a really, really good pick over
nationality is Adingra?
That period.
Is he not? Wouldn't he not be at AFCON?
I think it's French.
I thought he was Kenyan.
No, I don't think so.
I'm imagining it.
No, I think he's French. I feel like I want to check that. I don't think check that. I was French or Belgian. I think.
Okay.
I think he's French. I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be going to AFCON anyway. So Tottenham at home, West Ham away, Wolves at home, Luton away, Crystal Palace at home. Brighton's fixtures afterwards, play Sheffield United away, a couple after that as well. So I think Wildcard is in 19. We'll be able to go into different directions, whereas Simon Adingra
Ivory Coast.
Is he?
Yes.
Wow. Well, Julian Cisse will be fit anyway, so...
Yeah, but just but AFCON and
Asia. Julian Cisse does think he'll be back soon, so... Okay. Ansu Fati. So there's others you could target in any case. Correct. Anyway. Pervis Estupiñán is...
Colombian.
Ecuadorian.
South America.
South America. So it's definitely my point is you're potentially going to be using transfers over that period to sort out City, Brighton at problems, whereas those coming out of 18 and Wildcard 19 are just going to go and attack this different little spell of fixtures. I think we could look at it now and go, well, yeah, I'll attack some Chelsea. Yeah, I'll attack some Tottenham in 17. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be if you get a bit closer and you're carrying in your Jamal Lascelles and you're going, oh, shit, Botman's back. And I don't think, like I've looked at buying Lascelles this week, and that's the biggest thing that's put me off. I don't know when this Botman problem ends. If Eddie Howe came out and went, Botman's out till January, I'd be like, yeah, great. Lascelles is now perfect. Doesn't cost a lot. Plays for one of the best defences, and he's going to do me great in game week 18 because I've got Luton away.
Yeah,
fantastic. But I don't want to put myself in problems with those sort of players. So I'm already landing. I think this is a psychological weakness of mine when I play FPL. I'm already landing in a psychological issue where I don't want players who I'm concerned about in 2 months' time.
Yeah, but then look at Charlie Taylor away at Fulham. That's all right if you had to play him. He's still in the team.
It's not great either. But he might not be.
That's the problem.
As well.
If he's in the team.
As well. So I can see myself landing in a period coming up where at the moment I've got Saliba, Udogie, and whatever happens with Udogie, it's not a serious problem. We know that. Cash. And at the moment I've got Gusto. So Gusto will need to go unless I end up in this weird situation where, I don't know, Disasai and Reece James, it's not impossible, both get injured. Imagine I'm sitting there and I'm lucky enough and he's available. Sure, great. But Gusto will have to go. Cash can obviously stay. Saliba can stay. Udogie can stay. Shimikas, there would be a case to say maybe expendable, but it's still home games at Liverpool, so it's not a major problem. So I'm okay from that perspective, and I'm thinking what I want to do is make a move next week, something like Alvarez to Nketiah, which then allows me to go, say, Gusto to Estupinan, if Estupinan back fit. And then I just go, that's my 5, and it's strong, and I can just rotate them and pick whichever 3 I want every week, and it's fixing that problem. Then I can attack all the offensive stuff for the rest of the weeks. But you know what I found looking at my plan on FPL team? As soon as I put Nketiah in there, I started thinking, I don't like this. The rest of the offensive stuff became awkward after Arsenal's good run of fixtures ends in game week 15.
Move him on?
And I'd end up probably with what I want to do, end up moving him on to like a 4.5 forward.
Right. An Archer or something.
Because I don't want 3 forwards in game week 18. It's not another way of doing it is obviously target someone like Kieran Trippier. And I think, again, there's a consciousness of that. I know there's a few people talking about coming off trips at the moment. When you look at Newcastle's fixtures, sure, maybe you don't want to play him at Tottenham in 16. Maybe you don't want to play him this weekend. But I think most people, the right advice would be do play him. The fixtures are good. They've got Forest at home in 17 before that, Luton blank in 18 as well. So I can see that where Chelsea get targeted in 16, Tottenham and Newcastle get targeted in 17. But how are you getting from the City players to these type of players? It's going to be awkward. And I think it is a consciousness that will grow on people in forthcoming weeks. Of course, the third option, rather than having used your wild card and wanting to plough through it, and I don't think you're going to want a wild card in 20.
Okay, that's the last week you can anyway.
Or even 21. As in the second one. I don't think you want to use the second one that early. No. Or obviously people like me who are looking to wildcard straight after it is, of course, a third option, Suj.
Free hit.
Ben Crellin, who you already referenced, said on the Inspected Goals podcast last week that he was about 60% that he would free hit in game week 18. What do you think of that?
No.
That's also my instinct.
I tell you why.
Go on.
Well, it's quite straightforward. Is that whenever we look at free hitting, I feel like of the 11 that he will have as a starting 11 and the teams that we've just talked about, Villa, Spurs, Newcastle, I have 5 or 6 of them anyway. If not, maybe 7 or 8.
Ben might not.
Yeah, that's a different scenarios for different people. And if you really don't like Villa Spurs to hold afterwards or get in before, I can understand that. And then you can completely avoid those specific clubs. But as we discussed, Villa are okay afterwards. Spurs are okay afterwards. So, yeah, I wouldn't use my free hit for two reasons. One is I think I'll have at least half of the best free hit team for that week anyway, and I'd rather save it for when I can have 22 fixtures rather than 11 good fixtures. So I'm really using my free hit for the upside of 5 or 6 players. Not worth it for me.
Sorry, I should just clarify.
But that's my team.
Fulham at home, Newcastle having 17, not Forest at home. They got Forest at home in 19. So it's a good fixture
either side. So I can't see myself not ending up with at least half, 6 or 7 of the same players. Now, yeah, if you want to avoid those clubs either side, go for it. But there's no case for that.
There is a case. It won't be for me. I'm absolutely. I'm not going to free hit and then wildcard. It's definitely not going to be for me. But for those who have, there is a case. And Ben's a strategist, right? So he's not something he's come up with on a whim. There'll be some logic in it. And there are plenty of things that he and I would agree on in terms of strategy. And this is part why I ended up bench boosting in game week 1. Here's the issue. Game week 37 is likely to be the one big double, right? You probably want it in a bench boost. But a number of us have identified, Suj, a really good period to wildcard in the second half of the season, which is game week 31. So in game week 31, look at some of these fixtures, Suj. City play Villa at home, but there's good fixtures afterwards. Arsenal play Luton at home. Liverpool play Sheffield United at home. Newcastle play Everton at home. And they've all got pretty good fixtures afterwards. And that's off the back of some difficult fixtures beforehand. So City play Arsenal in 30, Liverpool and Brighton play each other in 30, Newcastle play West Ham. There's challenges before where you're not going to want to run in. And of course, what's the week before, game week 29? Blank FA Cup quarterfinals. Now, we can't be sure right now what the outlook is in terms of which of the, let's say, top half teams will and won't play in game week 29 as it stands. But there's a few matchups like Brighton, Manchester City obviously only needs one to get into the quarterfinals for the game to be postponed. Similarly, Arsenal were scheduled to play Chelsea in game week 29. Liverpool go to Everton. Tottenham go to Fulham. Like, it's very conceivable that a lot of these games involving the better teams in the league could go. So if you're carrying through, then to then have game week 30, you're going to end up binning these players. Imagine you've got those teams, say City and Arsenal, blank in 29, and then they play each other in 30, and you're not using, say, a free hit there for whatever reason. Then you're going to want to come straight off that. So then there's a swing. So the problem is if you wildcard in 31 and then bench boost 37, the problem is...
Big gap.
It's way too long.
It's a big gap.
And you can't be certain from there. Well, there might be a few you know, but you couldn't be certain that any team, if you wildcard in 31, their games would still matter in 37. No way of knowing.
Yep.
No way of knowing. Look at the shift in points between City and Arsenal over that period last season. So that's a concern. And that's part why I bench boosted in game week 1, because I've always felt that I wouldn't like bench boosting that late in the season where rotation could be mad and teams might have little to play for. I do think, by the way, ironically, because the Carabao Cup quarter-final draw, game week 37 and my new projections does look a little bit better than it did prior to the Carabao Cup games this week. But I still think it could be a headache. That's why I decided to get rid of the bench boost early. My current thinking is to free hit in that week. Now, the different way of doing it is, if you're still intending to land to bench boost in 37, the question would be, if you're going to run through the blank in 29, 30 and then wildcard in 31, when do you free hit?
Yeah. Unless you target a mad single game week, if there is one.
What, like now when everyone's got it covered? Let's say game week 12, Arsenal, Villa, Liverpool, great fixtures again, as they just were.
We've got them all.
So, I mean, that's probably not going to exist. So there is a strong case to say that for 29 and the cup quarterfinals later on, rather than using it as a free hit to cover, just plough through it and then get the wild card afterwards and then set yourself up. Another alternative for me might be to leave it open would be game week 34, where it is possible.
For the free hit.
Yeah. That's FA Cup semi-final weekend. Now, the games postponed that weekend could literally just move to the midweek afterwards, and it could just be a literal normal single game week where all 20 teams play once, but it's between, say, Friday and Thursday. It's just a really long week. So that would eradicate that. I think it's more likely you'll probably have 3 or 4 teams double, or maybe one or 2 teams blank is more likely. And it might be that a free hit would be more worthwhile attacking that. That probably depends on which teams are going to play in the midweeks when. Because the teams that play in the midweek of 34, of the good teams that proceed in the cup, will also play in 37's double, but it won't be a double in 34. It'll just be a single fixture. So the teams that double in 34 and double in 37 are likely to be different. This is where I still think that the free hit might be useful towards the end. But I certainly take Ben's point that if he's still looking to bench boost in 37 and looking at and running through 29, when the free hit.
Yep.
And therefore, rather than having a headache over this period of how to manipulate and go, well, I'm not going to go Chelsea, or I'm not going to go for these other teams because 18 doesn't look great or whatever. It's just go, right, 18 is a different problem for me. I carry through my City Brentford, and then it's more competitive with the teams that wildcard in 19. That's a real benefit of it. You can start moving towards the team that others will begin to put on their wildcard in 19. So I think it's a viable strategy. It's not one for me, but I can certainly see why Ben's considering it. And here's the thing as well. If Ben's considering it, a lot of other people will consider it.
In terms of the international break, is at the end of November?
Yeah, so between 12, 13.
I think we'll end up having another conversation about this when we come back after the international break.
Yeah, probably.
Definitely. And at that point, we can probably decide what we think might be a decent free hit team or an ideal free hit team. Did you say you had a draft free hit?
Yes, I did. So
418.
Yeah, I just
read it out. I think it's very early, isn't it? Really, in terms of injuries.
I think
form, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear it. I think the listeners would be interested to hear it.
If the games were this weekend, I think you'd probably go treble, Villa, Tottenham, Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
So what I put together was for Newcastle, Pope, Trippier, Wilson. Tottenham, Porro, Maddison, Son. Villa, Cash, Diaby, Watkins. Probably Watkins captain against Sheffield United. And the other 2 I put in at the moment was Salah against Arsenal. You got the money.
Yeah.
Might as well put him in home
fixture, yeah.
And Bowen actually against Manchester United.
So I've got the same 3 Villa. I've got Sonny. I've got Trippier. I've got Bowen.
So I've got 6 of that now.
Yeah, I've got 6 of that as well.
And there's every chance, if I'm not going to...
I'm missing 2 additional Newcastle. I'm missing Salah. But I'll have 8 other Liverpool attacker in that place as well. And I'm missing Tottenham defensive, and that's only because I wasn't going to play him until then. But closer to the time, I'm probably going to go back for Porro, to be honest with you.
Budget shouldn't be an issue for this.
Yeah.
It's possibly part why Salah and Bowen are in this. I think as alternatives, I said Forest at home to Bournemouth, so people like Awoniyi. Brighton are away to Palace, so that's a consideration. Chelsea are at Wolves. And
Did you just cheap out the bench?
Yeah, and Fulham at home to Burnley. So at the moment, I just put one player from each of those 4 teams just to highlight. Turner against Bournemouth, Dunk at Palace, Colwell at Wolves, Muniz at home to Burnley. I think he's one to... I keep saying that about Rodrigo Muniz. He scored in the week. He might get in that team as a really dirt cheap forward who could be an interesting... Now imagine that's the case and Muniz does get in the Fulham team and then you're landing for 18 and he's got Burnley at home. Now that suddenly becomes almost perfect and go, right, 2 up front, Muniz, oh my God, and it covers 18 really nicely, yeah.
Nice. It is quite a way away. We still have to get through the game weeks before then, but make sure wherever you are listening to Planet FPL, you are subscribed and you'll get notified as soon as any additional content goes out. If you want to support the show, you can head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL. We've got loads of different tiers that you can become a supporter of the show. You get loads of benefits now, James. You get additional prize leagues that we run throughout the year. Some may have closed, some still going. You get additional content each and every day, depending on what tier you're at, intermediate and advanced tier. We have a Slack community, which is hundreds of fantasy managers, both Sky Fantasy Football and that. And you get all of the podcasts ad-free because they get released on Patreon without any ads if they annoy you. Otherwise, skip them. But thank you to Sports Social for partnering up with us as well on that. There's all sorts of benefits over there. Discounts to like live events and stuff.
Do you want to plug the fucking live show or not?
We'll get to that in a minute. I'm plugging Patreon first. But
since this is your last chance.
This is. 2 days from now, we will have a live show, which patrons do have a discount at, which is at the Thirsty Bear in Waterloo. We'll be there from like 12:30, something like that. 2 games, 2 o'clock, 4:30, Forest, Villa, Luton, Liverpool.
Where you remembered it?
Live show. 7:30 till let's say 9:30.
7.
We're gonna start at 7, are we?
Woo! Yeah, 7.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, we'll be recording a live show. Loads of FPL managers coming down, some correspondents that you all know from Clash of the Correspondents and so on. Just head over to Eventbrite and search Planet FPL, or go to Twitter at Planet FPL Pod. Link in the bio. Get yourself a ticket. Come on down and say hello, have a drink, watch the game, and 20% off food and drink. In partnership with FPL Meets. There's so many bits of information to remember about this. It's a madness.
I've got one more because it's a question that's been coming up this week as well. Like we've said, all the money being raised from ticket sales are going to Game Week 39, the FPL Community Charity Football Match next year.
Correct.
Which I presume will still be for Street Child United, which is a charity set up for underprivileged children. Getting a lot more. I want to donate.
Yeah.
Don't buy tickets yet. The best advice I can say is if you're insistent on doing that, do it Sunday after we've started. So do it Sunday afternoon. So we haven't got you on the list of people arriving, but if you want to donate, then it will still go part of the fund. I think you would have to be on Sunday. It shuts down. Like you can't do it on Monday, basically. We're going to match the total as well. So if you do want to do that and just want to shaft us so we can put more money in the pot, then I would say buy a ticket between 2 p.m. and midnight on Sunday.
The reality is there's going to be plenty of opportunities to donate to Game Week 39 if that's what you want to do. If you want to support the event, then we're happy to have you.
No, I think people just want us to spend money, which is fair enough.
If those people are also not patrons that are adding to the coffers, then screw you.
Yeah, basically.
Love you all, actually, in reality. Thank you so much for all of the support with the show. Looking forward to seeing some of you on Sunday. Enjoy your weekend.
Not all of you.
Well, not everyone's coming, James.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to everyone that
that's
is
coming. I'm looking forward to meet. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. As always, play it your way. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please. Man-child. Ba-bam. You wait, Nico.